I'm Elly Maas and I'm going to tell the story of Geert and myself, no children yet, living in the Netherlands. And we moved from the big city of The Hague to a tiny little village called Zwolgen in the province of Limburg, and it only had about 900 inhabitants at the most. At that time we saw a 100-year-old farmhouse with land. This was in 1971. When we moved out of The Hague, it was because it was an upstairs apartment, and Geert was always looking for space around him to start the sculpture gardens or a gallery and show the artworks. So when we saw that farmhouse, it was in terrible condition, and we could just pay for it cash with guilders at that time, and so we could afford moving in there, just the two of us, no children. And Geert had at that time found a full-time job as a teacher in the nearby village. And so we moved in, and then the inspector for the property tax came along to check out who we were living there. And so we invited him in, and he said, "No way, this is unlivable, I'm not going in there." And so no property tax for that time. So after the time that we had worked and worked and worked, we never went anywhere on holidays, nothing. Then the inspector came back and he couldn't believe his eyes with the sculpture garden in place, a gallery in place. Because when we started there, we had the idea, we will build this place for generations to come and live in there like we, and hopefully that we get children who could live there. So that was our initial idea, to just create a wonderful place for generations to come. So the inspector looked and he said, old-fashioned tiles, all this wood, this antique, this is incredible. So the problem was that he gave the value of it, and so we just about literally fell over from the amount that he said it was worth, it could be worth. And then we found out the insurance also came into play and said, well, if the assessment is that amount, then you have to insure the whole property for that amount. And with Geert's salary and whatever we could figure out, there was no way we could stay there, we could live there. And it just happened that in November '78, we were on our first trip together to Canada to visit one of my sisters in Ontario, who had moved there in 1954, and we had never been there. And so we were there in November '78, and when they showed us around, we thought, this is what we need to do, because they showed us properties that we could afford if we could sell our house in the Netherlands. And so there started the idea of immigration forming into our minds. So ever since we arrived in Kelowna, we didn't know anybody, we had never been in BC, but we chose this area in BC over Ontario because of the dry climate, and we never regretted it. Thank you for watching the video. Geert and I invite you to come visit us in person or online.